Welcome to Pour Painting with Ron. In today's video we're going to be doing a ring pour. Now if you're unfamiliar with ring pours, the idea is fairly straightforward. All you need to do is basically layer paints in a cup, and then as you pour them onto your canvas you make little twirling motions to make the rings. Now, as you can expect, there are a million variations to the idea, but it's basically that idea. Now, I did one the other day, and you may have seen that video, but it's dried now, and I thought I'd show you the finished result because I think it turned out really awesome. So this was this one. I hope you can pick up the gold in this one because it's really quite spectacular. So I did 3 rings on this large canvas on a black background, and I stretched it out and I got these just lovely gold and red rings. So that's how it dried. I'm really happy with that one. Today we're just going to be doing a single ring pour, and I'm going to be using all Montmartre colours today. So I'm going to be using some white, and in the white I'm going to mix a little bit of Deco Art Americana Decor Satin Enamel. It's the white one. What that does in the paint is to give it a bit of a cloudy effect. So we'll see how that works today. You don't have to add much. I just put in about 2 teaspoons in my paint today, and that should be plenty. So I've mixed that with the white. Then along with the white, I've used some magenta and some turquoise and some purple. And my pouring medium today will be Floetrol. Now, if you haven't used Floetrol before, it does tend to get a bit lumpy, especially as you go down the can. So what I've done is just tied a little bit of stocking over the top, which strains it as you pour it out, and I've never had any lumps happening. Alright, now the canvas I'm using today is a 45 by 45 centimetre canvas, and for this size I need about just over 800 grams of mixed paint. That should be plenty. Now I've mixed up equal amounts of all of the colours, which means I've used about 80 grams of paint to 80 grams of Floetrol to give me about 160 grams of each colour. Now some colours are thicker than others, so with a couple of them I had to add some more Floetrol just to get the right consistency. But you'll see the consistency in a bit. And as usual, I've prepared my canvas by making sure it's tight. This one wasn't that tight, so I sprayed the back with water and then used a hairdryer to dry it, and that tightened up my canvas enough. And then I taped off the back with my painter's tape like I usually do, and I hammered in some large tacks. Then I double check to make sure my canvas is level, because the last thing I want is my paint running off while it's drying. So I just run my little leveling thing around the edges. That's level. If it wasn't, I could just pull the tacks in and out a little bit just to get it level. Alright, so I'm ready to go. So these are my paints. I thought I'd just show you the consistency I'm using today before we start. As I said before, it's important you have the same consistency across all of your colours. Can be a bit of a fiddle, but you'll get there in the end. You may need to add a bit more Floetrol, or if it's a bit too thin, add a bit more paint, just so you get them all right. Now, as I said, I added about 2 teaspoons of the Deco Art Satin Enamel in the white. Now, you don't need to use a satin enamel at all, but I like to use it in this pour just to give a little bit of a soft edge to the white. Don't go overboard because the satin enamel is quite reactive. So I've got that. Then the colours, I've mixed them so they're like really thick honey. So if I do a little twirl with the spoon like that, the little bump of paint on the top stays there for just over 3 seconds. So that should be fine. If it's too thin, your colours are just going to mix too much and you really won't see your rings happening. If anything, you want your paint to be on the thicker side than the thin side when you do a ring pour. Now you may be wondering why I've got some white here, some extra white. This one doesn't have satin enamel in it, and I've made it much thinner than the other ones. Hardly leaves a bump on the top, and if I do a little twirl, the paint only stays there 1 or 2 seconds. Now with a ring pour, it often works out better if the paint has something to slide on when it's on the canvas. It's easier to stretch out your rings without the paint rolling over itself to muddy everything up. Now you can cover the whole canvas with the base colour if you want to, but with a single pour I generally just put a little bit in the middle and pour my ring on the top of that. And then once I've poured my ring, I just put some extra around the outside before I stretch it all out. So that's what this extra white is for. I can't get it mixed up with the other one that has a satin enamel in it. So I'll put this one on this side. I'll put the others on the other side. All right, here's my canvas. Hopefully you can see what's happening. All right, oh no, before I do that, I need to pour out my paint, of course. So I've got my little jug here. I would use a cup if I had a cup big enough. If you have a smaller canvas, a cup is probably better to use, but my biggest cup just isn't big enough. So this jug will need to do. Now the colour you put in first is the last one that's going to come out and be the centre of your ring pour. So I'd like to have some white as my centre. So rather than plopping it in the middle, I just pour it down the side. And when I pour out my rings, I'm going to pour out this side as well. And then I'll put in some purple. And then some blue, or turquoise really. Magenta. And then blue. I'll put in the white again. Purple. Just keep repeating until you're done. Hopefully it'll work today. We'll soon find out. Looks quite pretty in the cup, doesn't it? Almost there. I'll do one more layer. Most of it may end up going over the edge. as I stretch it out, which happens if you have a bit too much paint, but it's better having too much than not enough. Last bit of magenta. And my last bit of blue. There we go. There. Then I'll pour out of that side as well. Oh, here we go. Now we're ready to use the canvas. Right, so I'm going to pour a little bit of white in the middle. Oh, a bit more. Needs to be thinner than your other colours so the other colours can slide over the top. Now I do need to keep this as level to the, or as close to the surface of the canvas as I can, which is a bit hard at the beginning, but as I go I will bring it closer. So just twirl it around, making your rings as you go. Now you can change direction if you want to. So I might do that just to see what happens. And at the end I'll stop doing my rings and just pour it onto the canvas just to create a bit of a different effect in the center. Change direction again. It's really up to you what you do. There's no hard and fast rules. We'll see how it turns out. Change direction again. For some reason, if you don't change direction, you may end up with most of one colour on one side and another colour on the other side. Okay, now we're getting to the end, so I'll just do the end like that, maybe give it a bit of a wiggle. When you get to the end, you want to catch any drips that come out. There we go. Now that is heaps of paint. I'll just put it in the middle. Then I'll get my thinner white. I'll just pour it around the outside. Most of that will get pushed off the canvas, but as I said, it just helps the other paint to slide over your canvas. Now letting my rings sit, allow the satin enamel to do its thing in the white before I stretch it out. The rings look pretty, don't they? hopefully it works. You never quite know what you're going to get with the ring pour. That's half the fun of doing pour painting. A bit much here. Just push some of it off. I said most of it gets pushed off anyway, so you don't have to be too particular. There we go. Now I'll give it a bit of a torch to get rid of air bubbles. Also help the paint do what it's going to do. Don't get too close or you will burn your paint. Okay. Now let's see what we're going to do. I'll just give it a bit of a twirl. You don't need to do it fast. Okay, now I'm just going to move down to this end. Just there. And then bring it back to the other side. See how the white is helping it to slide without the rings running over themselves. Bring it back to the middle, and then I go to this side. And then I bring it to the other side. Don't do it too fast. Take your time. Bring it back to the middle. Okay, and then I'll go to the corners. Corners are a bit trickier. Bring it back to the middle. And go to the other corner. Well, may you lose a lot of that magenta. Bring it back to the middle. And I might go down to this corner. And the more you stretch it, the wider the rings go. I don't want to lose too much paint yet. Bring it back to the middle. And then I'll go down to this corner. And I'll bring it back to the middle, and then I'll see what I've got. How are we going? Looking nice. I do have still too much paint on the canvas, so I do need to lose some. So what happens if you have too much paint? You have to lose too much over the sides. So I want to stretch out the middle a bit more, so I'll lose over the side here. back. Might lose a bit more over here. I'll bring it back. Let me see. I might lose some this way. And I'll bring it back. Look at my composition. I could still lose some. Get rid of this corner. So if you've got lots of paint, you've got a bit to play with. I do want to stretch out all these rings a bit more, if I can. Bring it back. See where everything's going. Looking nice. How's that? Got some lovely effects happening in this painting. Awesome. Oh, I'll just go and wash my gloves a bit and then I'll be back. So we're back. I'll just give it a bit of a torch. Popping the air bubbles. Lovely. Now I do need to go around the edges because I see there's some white bits. So I just pick up some paint and drizzle it over the edges or the corners. Let that dribble down and cover in the white space. This one's done. I see one's missing over here. Okay, and then I need to scrape underneath all the edges to get rid of that paint that's dripped down the side. So you may need to scrape a couple of times just to make sure you've caught it all. It looks untidy if you've got drips, dried up drips of paint hanging off the edge of your painting. I think we've got most of them. Now this will continue to develop over the next little while, especially with the satin enamel in it. It tends to make the white a little bit puffy. And the more satin enamel you use, the more effect you're going to get. Also, if you want a much softer looking painting, you can use a lot more white in your mix than I used in mine. But I wanted a reasonably bright looking painting today because I've done lots of really soft ones in the past. So it's just for something a bit different. Okay, I'll bring you in for a bit of a closer look. Okay, here we go. I think this ring pour turned out really lovely. The colour combination is awesome. So we'll start off in this bottom corner. You can see the rings, they'll become more defined over the next little while. We've got some interesting effects happening around this white centre. As you can see, it's really pretty. This is the top corner. And we'll go down to this other corner. Have it. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? Well, I hope you've learnt something new today about doing a successful ring pour, and I hope I've inspired you to give it a bit of a go yourself. The options for ring pours are really quite endless, so just have a go and see what happens. Now, as usual, if you enjoyed what you saw today, please press the like button. And if you'd like to see more of my videos, please take a moment to subscribe. Thanks. Now, if you're very new to pour painting and you want to know all the very basics of setting up your workspace and mixing paints and preparing canvases, please check out my first couple of videos where I go through everything in detail. I'm sure you'll find them really helpful. So, happy painting, and we'll see you next time.